Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this amazing Saturday, sunny Saturday of spring, as we come together to one more session online. With the difficulties that we encountered, we're still working together to deliver this amazing message that we have put together for you from the SSB, all of our friends, wishing the best to one another as we go through this moment. Before we start this amazing topic that we'll be discussing tonight, the planetary transition, we would like to invite everyone to pray and to think about not only ourselves, but our brothers and sisters who are home, those who are with their family, those who are going through some tough times now with what's going on. Everything. Let us include not only the difficulties, but all the good things that we are facing too, and the good that this will bring to all of us. We would like to thank you, our dear Creator, for this amazing opportunity that we have, that despite the difficulties, we are coming together through the web, through technology, the different avenues that we have encountered to deliver a good message, to bring joy, alertness to one another, and to encourage one another to partake in these difficulties, but changing times that we're being offered right now. We thank you, dear Lord, and we ask for your guidance throughout this meeting and for the rest of our lives. And so be it. So, dear friends, I will try to make this as pleasant as possible. I will have to go back to some of our technology here. So we're still kind of displaced and trying to connect and do the best that we can to make sure that we deliver the message with any interruption. As we have mentioned with Kirsten last week, we're doing this for our own places since we're not at the SSB because of the issues that we're facing with the coronavirus right now. And we will try to continue this way to do our part as a citizen to make it to spread any more. But we'll spread the message as much as we can through these avenues as well. And we would like to just go over a couple of things before we start. That it's amazing. It's an amazing opportunity for me personally. I'm not saying this in a way to exalt myself, but to deliver and study this book with you. When we decided to deliver this book, this study or the presentation on the chapters of this book, as we talked to many members of the SSB, we were in the beginning stages of what is happening in the world right now, with in China, where everything happened, but we did not know that it was going to get this way. I was reading a whole lot based on some personal things that I was going through. It involved a whole lot with what was going on then, but I never thought that this message would be so pertinent to this moment right now and so important to all of us. Why? Because this book brings us, as the title of the book brings to us, the planetary transition that we're going through, the suffering that we're going through right now. It's evident, and we can apply these two chapters, especially, well, I would say the whole book, but tonight, most importantly, these two chapters that talks about the environment of Earth when we were hit with the tsunami in the in Asia in general. So pay attention. Let us really resort to the elements that Manuel de Miranda brings in these two chapters, and let us take part on this, because if we are alive, well or not, sick or not, we have a way to extend our hand and to do our part as citizens, not only of our Earth, but also of the universe, to change the psychosphere, to change our mentality towards what's happening, and to become a better individual, and to help others to become a better individual as well. So just so we can understand where we are right now, we have covered in this, from this book, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And tonight we will cover chapters 5 and 6, new experiences and the work of illumination. Just a quick recap of what we have done and with these chapters. We actually invite you not only to watch the two previous sessions, session 2 and 1 of this book, of this series, but to read the book, truly read the book, and you will see what I feel Manuel P. Miranda brings with this book, talking about the planetary transition, the new pathways, a special visitor, a revelation message, and the earthly itineraries. Just a quick reminder here of what has happened throughout these chapters is that it's a preparation to come to Earth, as we will encounter ourselves diving into tonight or this afternoon, from a Manuel perspective in the spiritual world, bringing to us what was happening there and what was happening on the Earth, right? Receiving the message of what was happening in the two realms. The special visitor, receiving a special visitor in the spiritual planes, telling of what was going to happen in the future, as far as the work that will be laid out, not only in the near future, but in the future as we are right now. As well as chapter number 4, we saw that Manuel P. Miranda was actually a part of a group, a very interesting group, that we find ourselves with a scientist, which was Charles White, it's the head of the group, leading different individuals. Anna, who was his assistant, an Anglican. We also had Marco, a Filipino who was a Catholic priest. We also had Abdul Severin, a Muslim, who also was in the group. And we'll see these individuals playing a part on the work of rescue that Manuel brings to us. Oscar, who was with Manuel P. Miranda, and Manuel P. Miranda, who was the individual, the spirit who adopted the Spiritist teachings. Just going back real quick, Oscar actually, at the beginning of the book, was explained to us by Manuel P. Miranda that he was actually a Jewish faith. So we have this multicultural group, right, that was assembled by Charles White and the higher spirits to come to Earth and deliver the help that they were supposed to, partake in this immense work that was done in the area that was struck by the event that happened, the tsunami in Asia. I bring these highlights because it's important for us to analyze, that the work is not just a group of people. It's not just somebody that, okay, I'm going to give these individuals that person, and we're going to work. And no, there is a preparation. There is a hierarchy as well, in the sense that Charles White, conducting the group, keeps telling the individuals, look, let's pray. Let's be certain or attach ourselves as much as we can to the purpose of service. It's amazing when you read the book, when you read these 2 chapters, on how many times they remind one another on the faith of helping, right? Not the faith that they had, because they also bring that as well, but on the faith of helping. We're here to help others, to rescue others. so they don't go astray with all the difficulties that they were seeing. So in this time of, as we were saying earlier, in this time of difficulties that we're facing, we have to be faithful. We have to be faithful to what we have to do, whether it's to take care of our family members, whether it's to take care of our jobs, whether it's to take care of our friends, or whatever we must do. We have to remind ourselves and not let ourselves be distracted with what's going on. Obviously, we'll have to face some issues here and there, but let's be faithful to the cause. The cause is to take care of ourselves and take care of one another. So a couple of things that I would like to highlight, and I would like to highlight this before we even get into it, that some highlights, usually we'll bring this at the end, but I would like to set the tone that in these two chapters, they're very similar, in certain aspects. It's a report, as we said before, of what was happening in the spiritual realm and in the physical realm. In both realms of life, we see the desperate. We see the individuals who are suffering. We also see here on earth those who did not lose their physical bodies, suffering for those who left as well. We see spirits. We will see a very interesting case that the spirits, the higher order spirits, knew what was about to happen in the physical plane. But we'll get more to that. There was a problem. Excuse me. There was a problem. Manuel P and Miranda brings to us the problem of individuals who recently discarnate, not knowing that was going to happen. Let me actually explain this. There is a difference when an individual is sick, right, or ill for whatever reason, and understands that because of the failure of the physical body, will discarnate. I'm not saying that this is easy or easier or any better. We're not saying that. However, there is a preparation, and sometimes that is through the divine order that alerts us of the difficulties of the physical body. But in this case here that we are reading and we're learning from this book, that in case of someone or a group of people, in case of the book here, that discarnated in masses and they did not know that was about to happen, there is a huge state of confusion. So we have to take that into account as well. There were obsessors that are not only fighting for recently discarnated spirits, but also obsessors that are fighting over the physical energy and the bodies. It's hard to understand this, but the bodies that were lost, they were saved from the tsunami. The group always, they stuck together, as we mentioned earlier, and the mentor in this case, Charles White, kept reminding them to pray. They made use of prayer. They made use of passes to help those who are in need. And we'll go into details as we read together some of the passage. I didn't bring the whole thing. I did bring quite a bit because it's hard to portray what Manuel P and Miranda is trying to bring to us, but we'll dive into it as quick as possible and as effective as possible. So what happened was the Manuel P and Miranda start by saying that the preparation was actually he allowed himself to dive into prayer to start the work, and they met at a specific time, and they went to Sumatra in Indonesia, in that area where the work was going to begin. And he says that there were other spirits as well, groups of spirits already working, as we have mentioned in the past as well, that they were not the only group of spirits. Obviously, we're talking about here 7 spirits working. That would be for that area, for the number of losses that we had at that time. It would be irrelevant to have only 7 individuals. So there are many, many groups of spirits working in that area. And he starts chapter 7 by saying, after some time of rest and meditation, I let myself be inspired by prayer, entrusting myself to the Lord of life with respect to our ministry with the high order spirits whom we would soon meet on the earth. More than 2/3 of Indonesia had been affected by flood and destruction, also considered to be the most populous Muslim country. Its people, scattered among numerous islands, some of volcanic origin and others composed of limestone, had not grasped the magnitude of the calamity for lack of communication. Interesting enough, here we see that the author again, Manuel again mentioned the nature of the number of group of the majority of the individuals in that area, they were Muslim. So no wonder we have Abdu helping in this group, because they needed someone of that faith, understanding the culture, the religion, to be more effective, to help more. And we'll see a little bit more details on that later on, as well as the geographical or how the area is composed. So they study, they prepare, they understand. They don't just go and say, okay, what is this that we're going to do, and they jump into it. There is a study, there is a high order understanding of what was happening. Some high order spirits, this is the interesting part. Some high order spirits had approached the region at the beginning of December in order to set up temporary communities to receive those who would discarnate in affliction as a result of the impeding seismic event. When we read this passage, I said to myself, wait a minute. The higher order spirit, they knew what was going to happen. Yes, based on this, I can only assume that they did. And we can ask ourselves, well, why they didn't do anything? Well, remember, these spirits, they're high order spirits. They don't infringe the natural laws. They cannot change what is happening to the world, the natural changes of the world. They cannot change our choices. We have our free will. And I say this because later on we'll understand how was the psychosphere of the world, especially of that region, when this happened. And they cannot infringe on that. They can help, they can guide, they can allow us to do the best we can. They have to allow the orders. So it's important that we follow the same paths here. Not that we don't throw stone and say they should have done something. No, well, it's in any event of life, we have to go and allow others to make decisions. That's how we grow. And then it continues. The tempestuous force had hit the coast of India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and the Pai Islands, the Maldives, the Bangladesh, which is another country in the area, and part of Africa, though with lesser effects than those that had reached other regions. The first tidal wave had reaped more than 150 lives, while successive waves led with the wreckage of homes, boats, and buildings of all kinds, in addition to uprooted trees and boulders, horror devastating the coastal communities. So we can see here what happened. Imagine 150 lives in one single event, or couples in certain situations here, being devastated, being lost. What happens to the environment? And I would urge you to think about the spirits who lost their physical bodies in whatever situation they were. Think of someone who was eating, someone who was studying, someone who was actually taking care of someone else, someone who was actually about to go to sleep, and something like this happens. It's very devastating. It's very harsh. It's very difficult. And that's why we brought this at the beginning, to alert one another. And we'll try to make our point and what to do when we are praying for those individuals too. So we see that it's a completely despair or environment, or an environment of despair, right? Where not only the recently discarnated spirits, but also those who did not lose their lives but lost a loved one, or several loved ones, or lost everything. The material, that the only things that they perhaps had in their lives, they lost everything. So it was this scenario of despair. Manuel P. Miranda brings to us that international contribution had begun arriving right away, which is a great thing. However, aggressive instincts predominated among groups, of exploiters, vagrants, and criminals who took advantage of the opportunity to pillage and terrorize. Vibration storms discharged dense energies on the human and geographic remains, afflicting us greatly. So he brings the good, that it was happening, which is in fact the contribution that happened. I remember that we at work, my place of work, then we start actually putting things, donating things, material to be sent to the area, and other companies as well were doing the same thing. And I can only imagine that people took advantage of it, to do these things. And we can see that this is not only the physical, but vibratory storms also terrorize those who were working. So we can see that, again, he keeps going back and forth to the physical and the spiritual arena. Continuing, decomposing bodies were being piled up everywhere after being identified by relatives, whereas others were being moved elsewhere, calling our attention to the strong spiritual connections maintained by the newly discarnated, who were not yet aware of what had happened. Magnetically tied to their remains, they were thrashing about, experiencing the anguish of drowning, the pain of being hit by debris, and the despair of not knowing what had happened. From time to time, we heard prayers and supplications addressed to Allah, soon followed by storms of curses and blasphemies. So we see here that people were there, meaning they're praying, but at the same time they were, okay, what's going on? And we don't know. And it's this despair, this displacement of our thoughts of what happens when something like this happens, right? So it's quite difficult to apply any type of therapy, of help, when someone is in this position, in both realms of life. Imagine having to help someone who recently lost the whole family or a group of people. And we're not trying to terrorize anybody. We're not trying to bring in any more difficulty to our lives than we already see nowadays, but to alert ourselves, to help one another, to be put, to stay put, because this shall pass as well, just as this passed. In demonstrating of human solidarity, a large number of incarnates were at work providing assistance despite the dense night. Many of them had come from other countries and were experts in this type of relief. They mingled in with the caravan members from the beyond, equally dedicated to love for one's neighbor. Another positive aspect, that despite the difficulties that we are seeing that they saw at the time as well, guess what? There were people helping. There were people extending their hands. And we're talking about, as he said, expert, people who know, people who understand what needs to be done. Dr. White walked through the wreckage and corpses towards a group of discarnates that reminded me of a pack of hungry wolves or coyotes fighting over the remains of dead prey. The chaos was incredible, and the first fights between some spirits were shameful. Fist fights, were shameful. So we see here that we have the good happening, and we see that discarnated individuals were actually hungry for the remains of the dead. This is very, very bizarre in a way for some, scary for others, but this is the environment of that location, the environment that we are seeing in the world still nowadays, and we need to be alerted. We need to change this. But more to come, and we'll talk about it as we close tonight's this message today. Giving continuation, and this is a very important message to all of us, and this will give us an idea of what to do, along with the rest of the 2 chapters that we will see. But they were fighting over, as we mentioned, these coyotes, this idea of these animal that Manuel de Miranda is bringing, that they were fighting over the energy of newly discarnated, Dr. White explained. What is this? Where is this coming from? It's their nature. It's their condition. It's not that God created certain individuals, certain spirits this way. They turn or they became this way. They allow themselves to become this way. As well as sometimes ourselves, we connect with these minds. Um, our attitudes, or the way we live our lives, we connect, we allow ourselves to connect with them. And this is what we try to turn here tonight, hopefully in the near future, because every change takes time, takes energy, but this is what we're trying to accomplish here. And he says, with this attitude, they attack despairing, newly discarnate in an attempt to feed on their animal energies, is starting the unfortunate process of vampirization, identifying those who led irresponsible lives, enabling them to tune in to their vibration. They seek to drain them, speeding up their decomposition and drawing them to regions of misery, where they will subject them to abuse and mental exploitation. So, identifying those who led irresponsible lives, right? So these obsessors, these spirits that are on the other side, they were looking for those individuals that, okay, who is responsible here? And now let you decide what is irresponsible or not. We're not here to judge, but who here led a irresponsible life? Those are the individuals that we were after. Who was connecting, and we can say this in a positive way, who was connecting with the negative? Who was connecting with the things that we try to propose in our lives that is not so salutary? Let us think about it, right? Because this is something that gives us the capabilities to disconnect, to come to the other side, to the right side, and make better decisions. And since they are so wretched, they view the victims like wild animals, viewing for the spoils of the hunt. Our commitment at the moment entails removing the victims from this locale and trying to awaken them to their spiritual reality. So this is actually a Dr. White actually saying to them, look, the idea here is for us to connect with the spirits who were really recently discarnated, so that they don't become prey of these other obsessors. It's interesting to say here that the mentor was not trying to save everyone. He could not save everyone, but to save a few whom were still able to receive some kind of help and who were open for help as well. So they're not saying, okay, obsessors, now stop what you're doing. Unfortunately, that cannot happen. Unfortunately, he cannot, or they cannot, the whole group, because they work together, save everyone, but a few that were still in reach. A community, well, we already went. We approach and at the signal of the doctor, Abdu, now Abdu, remember, is our Muslim friend, wearing conventional Muslim garb, raised his voice and rhythmically recited an ayah, a verse of the surahs, chapters from the Quran, like a muezzin in a minaret. So he started praying. He just started praying. And Manuel P describes, the change, how he was able to involve some of the individuals who were fighting against them to stop what they're doing. And Abdu continued chanting, emitting a special and profound vibration. And suddenly there was a terrifying silence. He stopped everybody, as if the spirit they were fighting were snapping out of their madness. Just then, Anne approached carrying a torch that lit up the environment. She lifted above her head, and overcome with astonishment, the vampires and exploiters stopped their attack. So he's describing this amazing, when I say amazing, in terms of magnitude, war scene that was happening. They were fighting against individuals who were trying to exploit, to enslave other recently discarnated minds. It's not Leo who is saying this. It's Manuel P. And if you want to dive into it more, please read the book. We can discuss it more. But it's not me who is saying. And this is terrorizing to an extent. It is. but it really alerts us because it begs us to ask ourselves, what are we doing? How are we allowing ourselves to connect with the higher minds instead of with these minds? What things are we watching? What music are we listening to? What is the environment that we're creating in around ourselves? So it's important for us to think about this. So people were lost, people were confused, people were disoriented. And this is one of the amazing parts of the book that gives us the foundation or the guidance on what we need to do. Dr. White then explained to them what had happened shortly before on the December on the 26th. It was still December, starting at 8 a.m., and that all of them reaped by death needed repose, that their remains should be cremated collectively in order to avoid the diseases that follow such tragedies, some of which had already appeared. So he's explaining to the group that this is what needs to happen. We need to make sure, when I say the group, actually to the discarnated spirits, that they were lost. I mean, a lot of spirits, they were lost at the time. And imagine a group or a crowd of individuals who has no idea what's happening. And Dr. White is telling them, look, this is what happened. You lost the physical body. Now this needs to needs to happen. And those also who were trying to manipulate the physical bodies, the obsessors, they're also in this group. And so they can understand that this is not for them to take pleasure on it. The spirit riders watched in obvious astonishment as Father Marco took from the claw-like hand one of the spirits that was actually being enslaved, the spirit of a new deceased individual who, because the bonds of his spirit had not yet been completely severed from his physical body, was still thrashing amid the physical fluids, a state that caused this spirit inexpressible anguish, along with the terror he felt as a result of the cruel tormentor, who finally yielded to the priest's kind gesture. So now we have the priest coming back and helping as well through this work, taking from the hands of an obsessor spirit, a spirit who was actually about to be enslaved. In the meantime, Abdul spoke directly with a number of obsessors and scoffers, explaining the meaning of life and the laws that govern the universe, including, of course, the shadowy world in which they were trying to keep up the same behavior they had while alive. A moral transformation for the better was necessary so that they could truly live, freeing themselves from the fog that deadened their intelligence and diluted their sentiments. Knowledgeable of the human soul, and this is about the help. The skilled teacher was not intimidated by the threats of the number of hideous beings who were mocking him and the rest of us, shouting vulgar and aberrant epithets, and threatening to fight us in defense of their interests. We see that they're not fighting here with swords, they're not fighting here with guns, but they're fighting with their capabilities that they have, their moral capabilities that they have to involve those who are in despair, as well as fighting against the group to stop the work of hell. Individuals that are partaking in despair, in the difficulties of others, as we see nowadays as well. As we move on, I would like to, let's move on, and I would like to talk about the questions and comments that we'll have at the end, but I'll get there. We were engrossed in attending to that suffering mass when a group of incarnates began inconsiderately removing the bodies, taking advantage of the terrible darkness of the night. When they saw that when they thought that they saw everything, guess what? It was not everything. they actually start seeing individuals. These are now incarnated ones, incarnated spirits, actually, who are still alive, going through the bodies, going through the wreckage, if we can call it that way, unfortunate, trying to steal, for example, personal belongings, watches, and whatever they may come across. And Dr. White explained, those are corpuses robbers. Dr. White explained, they are searching for anything of value, considering that death surprised its victims without warning as they were going about their usual affairs. Although the authorities are trying to bring order out of the chaos, such unfortunate exploiters resort to every means possible in order to profit from the misery of others. In removing the rotting corpses, they do not fear contamination of any nature. They put up with the terrible odors, intoxicated as they are by the alcohol they ingest and the unbridled ambition of hoarding something for degrading pleasures. So those, my friend, that was the environment, the spiritual environment and the physical environment. The good that was happening, their help, the help that was happening in the physical realm as well, as we have mentioned, but the unfortunate, right? During these dark hours, we see that there are people taking pleasure on every aspect that we can think of. So before we move on, I would like to invite everyone, if you have any questions, if you have any comments at the end, and we'll open up for couple comments, as we usually do at the SSB, at the Spirit Society of Baltimore, to ask questions, to make comments. If you would like to do so and extend your comments, please, if you know my information, you can send it directly to me by WhatsApp. And if not, if you're following through us through Facebook, send it through Facebook. I'll have Daniel then send it over to me, and we can go ahead and discuss a little bit at the end. We're not going to extend too much because this is meant for us to truly pick up our books and read it. This book is actually available to you online if you speak Portuguese. You can actually find it in a PDF. I like the book. As you can see here, we had some damages here by my little four-legged friend who felt inspired to dive into Spiritism a little bit. But I like the actual physical book because you can take somewhere with you. It makes it more personal, at least to me. But you can do whatever you'd like to do. It is in English. You can find it on our page. And you can also find it through Leal Publisher as well online. In any case, let's go back to what was happening. Chapter 6 is no different. Chapter 6, it's entitled The Work of Illumination, and it's a continuation of what we have been seeing here. The mentor, Charles White, of what I call the mentor is because he's the head of, maybe I should call the head of the group. He is bringing the analysis or the explanations of what was happening in the realm of the spiritual realm as well as the physical. And he says, in the physical realm, this is Manuel Filomena de Miranda saying, the search for bodies in order to identify them was distressing because people were weeping and cursing without any awareness as to what they were saying. It was a collective catharsis, under the inclemency of the torturous darkness. Manuel Filomena de Miranda, in many of these altars, they don't bring these things just for nothing, right? These messages just for no reason. It's important that we analyze this, and we see here, it's distressing when we're already suffering, and we start cursing, we start saying negative things, we connect with the negative, instead of praying, or simply say nothing and ask for help. If you have to get on your knees and claim for help, please do so, but don't curse, but don't say negative things. Don't judge, don't call names, because this is only more detrimental to this situation instead of helping, right? So if you find yourself in a tough moment, don't do it. Just remember this passage. It is us begging one another not to say anything negative, right? If you're going through a tough moment, whatever that may be. On our side, the spiritual scene was no less harrowing. As they came near, we saw several hideous spirits with wolf-like faces and forms, if we were in a scenario of a sickly imagination, observing former human beings that had become victims of zoanthropy. With repulsive and horrid appearances, their gaping mouths were drooling and their glowing eyes were looking for bodies whose spirits we were liberating. Think about this. If many of you may know what zoanthropy is the belief that someone is an animal, and the person or the individual may do things like animals, depending whatever animal he or she may think it may be, it will act alike. And these were spirits, and we'll see the explanation soon here. These are spirits who were presenting themselves as animals. As just Manuel mentions here, wolf-like faces, excuse me. And then he continues, and this is an explanation by Dr. White, Charles White, explaining what the reasons why these spirits became this way. Those were wretched spirits whose life on earth were awful. They constructed their current terrifying appearances as a result of the evil they practice. Indifferent to the suffering they cause, they had quit their sensitivity to live, and thus they physically deformed their present form. The only difference between them and other cases of zoanthropy is that normally it is individual, so just one case. However, because they were a ruthless group that worked together, the phenomenon enveloped all of them, molding them to the wolf-like form, making them all audacious, imprinting them with elementary needs typical of the genus Canis lupus, like a wolf, and keeping their minds dull. Due to the automatism, they will remain in the fury of imbalance until God's mercy sends them back in the excruciating reincarnations of expiation. I'll say it again. They constructed their current terrifying appearances as a result of the evil they practice. Indifferent, this is another element, indifferent to the suffering they caused. So it's more like, if we take a deeper dive into this, because it's so terrifying, is that we were, the individuals, they were causing suffering, and they didn't care. There was no remorse. There was no feeling of, oh my gosh, I've done something wrong. That is far beyond from their reach. They just didn't care. They were indifferent from the suffering to the suffering of others that they caused. It's not that people are suffering and you didn't have nothing to do directly to, with that individual, and you don't care, but to what they did. This is what got them to be this way. And the other aspect as well, this was a group of people working together. And that's why after they discarnate, they also present themselves in that region that was actually in that way. And this is not for us to believe that this only happened or it happens in that area, right? But it happens anywhere. We see also unfortunate souls that are acting this way, right? That in different parts of the world. So it's not so, oh, this only happens there. No, it happens everywhere. It can happen to us if we don't watch our thoughts, if we don't truly try to transition from what we were yesterday to a better person, and tomorrow try to be a better person than we were today. Manuel Filomeno Miranda continues, then bringing to us what Charles White was telling us. The mind is always the generator of blessings or misfortunes, for aspirations of one kind or another always stem from it. When humans finally consider the power of thought that comes from their innermost being, there will be radical change of moral and social behavior, making way for the important achievements of triumphant immortality. we have to understand the capabilities that we have. We have to exercise more our free will and be really certain that we are capable of doing better things, live a better life, wishing the best for us and wishing the best for others as well. It's not to live a mundane life that we only take care of our physical necessities, which is important, but also to sublimate those necessities by doing in such a way that we enhance our lives. On the earth, in the field of communications, there are many praise multipliers of opinion in tune with bestial entities that subject them to the will of their aberrations, doing lengthy out of the body experiences, doing physiological sleep, deeply imprinting their innermost being with debauchery, delirium, and moral degradation. Upon returning to the somatic body, to our physical body, they recall the depraved experiences they enjoyed, and they encourage their admirers, others, to pursue lust, sex laces with hallucinogenic drugs, alcohol, and pharmaceutical stimulants. So we see here that here on earth, individuals like you and I, we have what? The capability of sleep. Thank God. We go to sleep and we try to rest. But instead, we are doing what? Because of our behaviors during the day, because of what we're watching, how we're connecting with one another, we connect with these other minds, right? And then when we come back, what we do, we live this lavish life that Dr. White is actually portraying to us. And sometimes we like to point fingers. Why is this happen? Why is that happen? Why is this region of the world this way and that way? Continue, he says, it's no wonder the new generation indulges in loud music of immoral content at dance clubs conducive to primitivism and sensuality, where the pervasion of sentiment is the tonic, and where the stimulus to violence, rebellion, and aggression comprises the panorama of rebelliousness. But against what, really? He asks. They make themselves opponents of the so-called establishment instead of developing meaningful ways to improve it. And they immerse themselves deeply in the vilest passions, making the days ahead worse for themselves and others. Consequently, they get addicted to drugs and exhaust themselves with sensual, perverse pleasures. So it's a rebellious conduct, where I'm going to do this to prove to the establishment, to the status quo, that I am not part of what they're doing. It's completely wrong. It's completely wrong. And again, we're going so deep into the really difficult situations that we see, as the use of drugs, the music and all these things. But sometimes we really have to take into account the minor things in life, right? The little things that we are doing, because it's very easy for us to go ahead and apply this to someone outside or to other individuals outside on what they're doing. But what about ourselves? Are we really watching ourselves? Are we really watching our thoughts when we see something on TV? We have an argument. It's very easy for us when we have an argument to mentally and inside of us, we are saying things to that person that we know that we cannot say physically because we're going to get in trouble, but we're doing so. So we have to monitor that. And if it happens, it's okay. And I say this, it's okay because we're humans. We're here to make mistakes. However, we're here also to correct our behaviors. And if it comes up, you say, no. I'm a better person than I was yesterday. I need to do something different. This is part of me, but only temporarily, right? This is, I can change the scenario. Not what the other person is doing, but I can change myself. Because if we try to change the other person on how the other person is responding to you and the world, we're going to get in trouble. But we can actually do this for ourselves. Thus far, we see that it's nobody else's fault. It's our fault, right? And if we are this way, we are immersed in this life, in this physical arena, in this planet. This time again, it's because we have a past, right? And this is the present. But we can do certain things. We can change certain things for us to dive into a new future. That's why I bring this beautiful slide that that kind of guides us on what to do. Look what happened in the past. Let's just dive real quick on what happened in the past for that region to be that way. The psychosphere of the region and to become that way, to become so detrimental that way. Manuel Miranda says that tourists from many European countries, especially Scandinavians, in addition to Americans, French, and Germans, had always chosen the region for the pleasures of the body without any appreciations for the beauty of the landscapes of the South Seas with their still semi-preserved environment. Interesting enough that, for many of you who know me, I love the beaches. I am the person, perhaps if I could live by the beach, I would do so. But he brings this aspect over here that people were there not because of the beautiful environment, the landscape, but to exploit the area. So it's okay for us to go and visit a place that is nice and brings us joy. It doesn't have to be the beach. It could be the country. It could be any other area. Some people love the big cities, but we have to look to really understand our intent and here and in our hearts as well. He continued by saying, many travel to those havens, including Thailand, the Maldives, the Pai Islands, and others to enjoy the moral and sexual laxity of young teens sold by irresponsible parents into the trade of licentiousness. This still effective ancestral custom of total disregard for women and other human beings facilitated widespread prostitution for girls and boys who would be abused by Westerners that could buy them very cheaply. Wow, it's quite how am I going to say astounding to see such a thing in a Spiritist book, but it's the reality. It was the reality. I am quite sure that it still happens. I am quite sure that it happens not only there in that area, but in around the world where people are partaking in these environments, right? And they're doing so. So that was happening before. Over the past few years, it says, minds had generated that unhealthy psychosphere in the areas now affected by the disaster, which actually had a purifying function for the entire region by changing customs and proposing new moral behaviors because of the suffering. And sometimes we think suffering is just suffering. No, but it was helpful then. And at the same time, warning about the fragility and temporariness of organic life, which unfortunately was not yet showing any sign of improvement. On the contrary, there was revolt, bribery, diverted international aid, and the domination of the strong over the weak, who were at the mercy of their own luck as far as their bleak future was concerned. He says, how much Jesus' presence is missed in the world, as well as that of his ambassadors, who over time came to prepare his coming. No wonder we have a Muslim. No wonder we have also a Jewish, a Jew, actually, someone of the Jewish faith. No wonder we have a Catholic, a priest helping, an Anglican, someone of the science, as Dr. Charles White helping, missionaries of light who came, who are here with us, but we still not grasping yet the grandeur of our Master Jesus in these different areas, despite the religious faith, their religious beliefs, their faiths, and whatever they are following, but to extend a hand into respect to ourselves and respect to others as well. His proposals, reach with tenderness and hope, consolation and love, have not yet penetrated even his followers. And this is for us, let alone those who do not know him at all, giving rise to the follies of immediacy, of emotional and moral decay in the games of unbridled desire. Spiritual enlightenment is an enormous undertaking that requires selflessness and devotion, and is compensated through the peace it provides in the joy of living without extravagance or unhealthy dependencies. This is what we need to do. Right here is the change. This is going to be our shift to embark in a new future where we don't see this happening anymore. That little by little, it's going to take time, but little by little, we will be able to change our environments, right? Where a country is respected. When I say a country, it's not the flag or this or that, but the flag that are raised by its citizens by saying, not here. Here, you're not going to exploit anyone. Here, you're not going to use of our children to do whatever you would like to do. Because many of these individuals who are there doing these things, and we're not judging, we're just analyzing the situation, they cannot do this back in their countries because they know that the laws there they're very punitive, and they will go to jail, and they will have to respond to their acts. So we have to shift. We have to help and extend our hands and do a better job in different senses, in many, many senses, instead of just acting accordingly to the status quo. One final slide that I would like to share with you in this whole thing, to summarize a little bit. I did not bring the one of the cases that Manuel P. Miranda brings to us on chapter 5. I would like to go back and just kind of reanalyze with you that there was actually a mother who was struck by the tsunami that was actually carrying her daughter with her, who was completely lost after they encounter her. They find her, and she is about to be taken by one of the obsessors. I did not share there directly with you so you can see it on the screen, but I wanted to highlight that, as well as the next case that I would like to bring with you, because Manuel P. brings these two cases, and I think it's very prudent that he does this, because he was able to portray that for the people who were doing something useful, that they were able to be rescued very quickly and very effectively. It's interesting that those individuals who were worried or preoccupied with something more meaningful in life, like this mother in chapter 5, she was actually rescued right away. And in turn, what happens is they alert her that, look, remember that you have all the loved ones that you need to help for, right? To take care of it. And the lady, the mother was able to change the environment, her mental and environment, where she was able then to be rescued. In this case here, in chapter 6, Manuel P. Miranda says that suddenly in the circle of wolves, we saw a haggard woman who was looking for her mother, also victim of the disaster. Already voiceless, she was calling out her mother's name while trying unsuccessfully to rid herself of her own body. Remember, the connections were still there, immediately arousing our compassion. These individuals, these spirits, they were still attached. They had some connection. I shouldn't say attached, but had still some connection with their physical body. It happened so fast. It was so dense that they were still connected somehow with the physical body, and they were coming in to help these individuals on a full disconnection. She had been attending to her sick elderly mother when the tidal wave tore their home off its foundation, pushing it along with coconut palms and other large trees, smashing everything in front of it. It's horrible. The death of the body was immediate. Excuse me. And she soon awoke in agony amid ruins of what had been the place where she used to live. She had nor realized her situation because for her, she had not realized her situation because for her, the day had not dawned yet. So it's interesting because this is what's happening during the day. She was still in this state of confusion because now it's dark at night, and she's like, well, where's the sun? What happened? Again, another aspect for us to understand, just like when we take a quick nap and it's in the afternoon and it's suddenly the night, we're like, what happened? How many hours did I sleep, right? The same thing happened to us, a huge state of confusion. Everything was still covered in the darkness resulting from the heavy environment vibration as she surrendered to despair in search of her elderly woman, in search of the elderly woman, her mother in that case. At that moment, something beautiful happened. In the dense darkness, her discarnated mother emerged, led by a noble discarnated friend who was helping her approach her crazed daughter. Seeing now our work of assistance and informed by her spirit mentor, she smiled and tried to thank us without words. Then she embraced her completely unbalanced daughter and started singing a sweet melody that spoke of joy, of hope, joy, and reunion. The young woman gradually calmed down and fell asleep in her mother's lap. Interesting here because she was taking care of her mother of a higher essence, if we can call it that way, came back to rescue her daughter who was taking care of her. What a beautiful thing, right? To finalize this chapter this way, showing to us that those who are, again, working, serving, they will be rescued. And they're rescued in let's say, in a faster way, in a more effective way. We helped free her from her physical remains, whose last energies were absorbed by her spirit as she rested in her mother's lap. The sweet vibrations of the woman and her distinguished spiritual statue radiate outward, touching the perispirit of her daughter, who was taken to a sphere different from ours. Again, another example. I would like to stress on this, of the true meaning of what we're doing here. As we have said at the beginning, what is the meaning of life? There are many things, there are many distractions in this physical world. I sometimes tend to overanalyze sometimes, this distraction. I'll give an example. You go online to look for one specific topic, something, whatever. I mean, you can look for the meaning of a word, and the number of things that's going to pop up on your computer saying, look at this, look at that. If you speak near your phone about anything, you will see several offers of that element that you had, said next to your phone. You're listening. It's the digital world nowadays, and you get all these distractions. This is just an example, and we're not judging here, but to portray, to show you that there are many distractions in the physical planet. But why are we here? To take care of ourselves and to take care of one another, to learn, to serve, right? To guide this planet through this transitory moment that we're going through right now, from a planet of trials and expiation to a better planet, and really apply ourselves. These were the last moments, that were the last chances that were being given for us to change ourselves. As we saw, there's a lot of spirits that, unfortunately, they were giving the last chances for them to change, but they don't want to change. It's their choices. Unfortunately, there are many individuals that are not contributing to this transition. But at the same token, in another way, there are also amazing people that are coming together to serve and to guide and to change. What we need to do in this moment of despair, just like these individuals went through this transitory, let's say, moment of their lives back in the day, is to pray. You may ask, but Leo, it's so hard to pray, so hard to connect with the higher minds. What should I do? Right here, chapter 27, 28. If you're a spiritist, the gospel according to Spiritism, you understand more about prayer, how you can be more effective, right? How can you pray? What's the meaning of it? What happens in the environment that you're praying? If you're not a spiritist, or hopefully you're watching this, your book of faith. It's a simple, positive feeling or thought that you carry in your mind, especially during the moments that you're suffering or that you see someone suffering. Connect with whatever belief you have of joy, of encouragement, and that will illuminate and that will create a different environment. That's the only thing that personally I would like to ask you, watching this with me and following this with me, and many of us obviously in this transitory moment of our lives. There are many aspects that I would love to have brought here for you, connecting even more with the Spiritist teachings. We can actually go to the Spirit's book, and on chapter 7 of the first part, we will see what's the state of the spirit after discarnation, and it's entitled "The Return to the Spirit Life, the Soul After Death, Separation of the Soul and Body, the State of the Soul After Death." And then towards the end, we will see the afterlife. I mean, the future joys and sorrows of this book, right? That is very amazing as well. And what happens to us? We are studying right now Heaven and Hell at the Spirit Society of Baltimore, that talks about the life and the afterlife, the aftermath after we lose our physical bodies, depending on how we live on Earth. It's important that we look at the state of happiness or unhappiness, right, of the spirit after they discarnate, and make a correlation to how they were living on Earth, right, on their last life. In the events of their life too, it's important to take in consideration, not judging, but in a way that we can learn and we can actually exercise in our lives. So this is the moment that I would like to open. I will stay put for a couple more minutes, in that we can actually open up for questions and comments. I will be in connection with Daniel, so that looking on my phone, so we can answer some questions and perhaps bring some light to what you would like to ask or comment on. I see there are many. There are some issues here that we had, but we will have also the recording part of it. And
Leo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
These two chapters, but it's more related to the current situation that we are living right now with this health situation, health issues, and how much this can impact the atmosphere, the spiritual atmosphere of our planet, because not everybody is serene, not everybody is feel, like accepted the situation and work in a way that will create a environment of positive thought, that this is just a moment that shall pass, because in humanity we have going through so many challenges like this, especially related to health issues, health situation.
Right.
So in these two chapters, I mean, like, can you kind of like elaborate the current situation with what you have learned in this two chapter of this book?
Mm-hmm. Very well, Daniel. And I'll bring the physical aspect of what really struck me. The other day, we were seeing in Italy what has happened of the army actually moving bodies, recently discarnated individuals, or passed, went to the other side. But we see really alarming. The bodies being taken to be cremated because of the effect of coronavirus, and that really struck me. And I'm giving my example, putting me in as an example. When I saw that, I was like, "Wow, man, this is like a war zone, right?" And quickly, I started feeling down. I started feeling like, "Oh my God!" I mean, this is really really tough, because we didn't see that in China. They didn't show much of what was happening in China, the number of people who died, which now Italy has reported that they actually have more cases of death than in China. So what we saw the reality happen in Europe now, and what to do, right? The battleground is right there. And I would like to tie this comment that you asked me to make with what Kirsten just mentioned. How long did these vampires spirits stuck around before the spirits came and helped, or did the good spirit just observe them, right? The work is happening. As we saw, Manuel P reporting, is that there was a legion of spirits going to the area before it even happened. So they had an idea. They can foresee things better than we can, equipped or not with some let's say some technology that we can assume they have. But they're ahead of us, spiritually and mentally speaking. We can definitely know that. So the work is happening. But unfortunately, on Earth, there's still this environment of people taking for granted the tools, the energies that we have, as we saw, Manuel, as Dr. White saying, for us to understand the power of the mind and not allowing us to help. Quite the opposite. We enter in despair. We engage. We see some of the things in the news, and we're like, "Oh my God, it's really tough." I work with the public. I am actually directly dealing with the public, and I've been seeing it. I mentioned to some of you this week, it has been a really, really tough moment of my life because people are in the edge. People are on the edge. People are doing things that I haven't seen done before, and it's quite tough because we don't have something that we can hold on to it and allow ourselves to become better individual, or to let's say to change the environment, right? And that can be sometimes something small, because you may ask, Leo, what is it? What is it that we need to do? Just sit down and pray. What if I don't know how to pray? What if I'm not a person of faith? Stick with your family. Look at your immediate needs. Sometimes you will find what's important for you and what will be important for other people, right? I also saw this gentleman calling the attention of in a supermarket in Brazil, where people are buying things that they don't need. And then the elderly who does not have the opportunity to go and buy as fast as they're buying, they're not going to have enough to buy later on. So we have to think, what are my needs? However, what are the needs of others, right? In this time of difficulty that we're going through. Those little shifts will allow us to connect with the higher minds that are around us, because they're there. We may not see it, we may not perceive it, but definitely they're there. As much as the despair, those who would like to create despair and difficulties in their lives as well. I hope I have answered the question. I know it's very broad, but going back to what Kirsten asked, the spirits are there, Kirsten, and Dr. White, in couple instances, he reminded the group, stick to what we came here for. It's not to save everyone. He doesn't say that way, obviously, but it's to save those who we have some kind of connection that we can touch. Because this idea that we can save everyone, it's fallible. It's not going to help. So it's very difficult. We will prevail. I think we're going to learn a lot from this, as we have learned from the different wars of life. But it's definitely an opportunity for us to grow in this environment.
Thank you, Leo. That was very good. I think
we'll try to put some music here so we can follow it together. We would like to thank our dear Creator for this amazing opportunity that we had, guiding ourselves, guiding one another through this message, asking that our brothers and sisters can watch this talk at a later time, rewatch it, that our brothers and sisters can dive into the book, read, explore these teachings, and change their environment as quickly as possible to a better one.